Evening all. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Yeah, kind of 5 past, 10 past. That's basically 8 o'clock for me. We all doing good, I hope? And not only is it Wednesday, it's also competition day. So we shall give away our 4 captain ranks this time, thanks to Firstus and AJ, and our usual 3 development keys. So if Claire is ready, then we shall get cracking on that. Just sorting out the random number. Yeah, bunk sharing, I'm afraid. Right, let's wrong one. That's the one I wanted. Apologies for blinding everyone. Okay then, so without further ado, let's go ahead and generate our first number, which is 3,685. Seal Lad, congratulations, you get our first captain's key. As always, I shall wait for Claire to give me the all clear to proceed. Yes, Thomas, our Ko-fi page has the most popular Kickstarter tiers there still available. I think it's actually in the video description if you have a scroll down. At least it should be. Our next key, or captain tier rather, is 5,422. And that is Free Gamer, or Free Gamer to pronounce it correctly. Congratulations. Yeah, sure things, I look. Help yourself. I'm not sure if it will let you, to be honest. Okay, so our next captain tier goes to 2581. And that would be Sonna. Congratulations, Sonna. Ah, nice. For anyone that is thinking of backing to get a captain's tier key, do be aware that we are going to be releasing the demo very, 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 very soon. So you might want to hold off. Although, obviously, once you have the captain's tier, you get all of the dev builds as they happen, which is usually about 2 a week. And our final captain tier, and let's call this AJ's one, goes to 3,220. Overdex, congratulations. Okay, so that is our 4 captain tiers. The next will just be development keys. Yeah, there's no DRM or anything on it, so you can just copy the Steam folder away and place it wherever you want. Okay, so the first key goes to 4,100. And that would be Shadow Master. Congratulations. Yeah, generally it works with Proton, although it's not supported, so we can't offer any help with making it run under Linux, I'm afraid, because we don't have any Linux devs, and I don't use Linux. I know very little about it other than my web dev days, so not supported, I'm afraid. But it does work. Okay, and our next key goes to 6840. And that is Captain Coombs. Congratulations. Yeah, it does work on Steam Deck. So if you're using kind of mouse and keyboard emulation, it's playable. At least it was last time I tried it. Okay, and our final key goes to 8154. And that would be GameHog. Congratulations, GameHog. Okay, there we go. Congratulations to our winners. Commiseration for those who missed out this month. We will again be doing this next month, so make sure you get a number in on Discord at the beginning of next month. Oh, sorry, Joan. Close. Random.org tends to pick a lot of kind of middling numbers between 1 and 10,000, so perhaps there's a bit of a trick there. Maybe pick numbers that are kind of in the middle there somewhere. It seems to rarely go for like super low or super high numbers. I'm sure there's some kind of statistical bell curve analysis you could do on that, but that's not my kind of level of math. Right then. So that's that done with. As always, let's have a quick look at what I've been doing. So the new scanning and navigation tutorial is, I would say, like 99.9% done. There's a couple of voice lines that need re-recording because she either mispronounces a word or just kind of mumbles the word a little bit, which is probably just me mumbling it when I was doing the voice recording. But apart from that, it's pretty much good to go. So that's done and dusted for the most part. I've done all of the panels, like all the way around F and G deck, so there shouldn't be any gaps now. And as you can see, I've done a new entranceway into the maintenance tunnels. I went with this kind of nice sort of chrome handled approach, and I actually really like that. And you know, part of me wants to dump these like black handrails in favor of metal ones like this, but yeah, not anytime soon, otherwise Claire will disembowel me live on stream. Yeah, they've got a real sort of solidity to them, which I like. They did actually go further up than that, and then I realised I need to fit the door panel in, so I had to bring them down a bit. So yeah, so that's all done there. There was one small issue in here, in that because we've got our typical double width wall, we've got a discrepancy on here where the edge of the window is. So with all of these segments being equally sized, putting what is a 40 centimeter wall between them obviously causes this problem because the join line is in the middle, which on this one would be like here. So I'm probably going to have to change the size of that window when I do this room properly. It's a minor thing, but it's just one of those little niggles that need fixing. But obviously I can't fit a corner panel in there. And the same on this side, obviously, because it's mirrored. So this room's going to be the workshop and 3D printing area for engineering. And then this is going to be the emergency power room with a bunch of capacitors. It's currently also the startup capacitor room. And it will remain that until we properly make it the emergency power room. On F deck, it's pretty much the same story. Everything should be done around here, and then all that should be done around there. Again, we've got the same new style of entryway into the maintenance tunnels. I do still need to move these lights, so that's one job that needs doing. But that's about it really, not a lot else to be fair. The only other modelling work that needs doing now is wall panels put back in here, and I need to kind of stretch the top of this wall up a bit so it meets the deck above, but that's like a 2-second job, so no big issues there. No, we've still got that one panel there, and I think there's one up there as well somewhere. I'm leaving them till last. They'll be the last thing I do. They're kind of out of the way and out of my eye line, so yeah, last job on the list. So we're like rapidly running out of things to do for this particular patch cycle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a poll to see whether we're doing some bug fixing tonight or doing the paneling in here. So let me just remember how to do that. Start a poll. That'll be it. What shall I work on tonight? Okay, poll has been posted. Wow, 64 gigs of trash. That is one massive recycle bin. I shall just give the poll another couple of minutes. Yeah, to be honest, I'm just as 50-50 on it myself, because we're at that point now where practically everything's been done, so we're literally just squirreling around looking for things to do. Well, both need doing. Actually, on the tracker, we are currently sitting at 41 bugs. And to be fair, of those 41 bugs, Some of them are referencing things that are just not finished yet, so technically they're not bugs. They're just like an unfinished feature. And some things are kind of more feedback than bug. But there's a few nasty ones on there, like the sensors lagging for clients when you're trying to click through the long range sensors. That's a particularly nasty bug. I think there was another. Oh yeah, everyone turning into Claire when they sit in a chair. That was a particularly nasty one as well. Yeah, I think other than that, it's mostly just either cosmetic things or things that are relatively minor. But we will try and fix as much as we can. Okay, well, I think the poll is fairly decisive. We will be doing some wall panels in the reactor room. Oh, a couple of last minute votes in there. But still the wall panels are winning. So let's do the wall panels, and then if we get that done quickly, we'll move on to bug fixing. So in here, we've basically got a door panel to do, which is the same as that one, so that's copy pastable. The window frames to do, which again is copy pastable, and then just plain wall panels, which again are copy pastable all over the shop. So I think what I'll do, because I haven't actually braced out the interior of this to work out the actual panel separation, so we'll do that. And I'm also trying to kind of future-proof a little bit, because obviously the stairs need to go down here at some point into the cavernous bit below. Should I turn the light on? Basically, you've got the central shaft that's going to go down here. So that's the keel fin, basically, that supplies power to the rings. We want access to that via here, and maybe even an engineering lift going down there as well. So if we do the stairs here and kind of poke them through, then that lines up with that nicely. And then the lift on this side, we have like a maintenance-y cargo type lift here, just like an open platform lift. Then again, that kind of lines up nicely with this side. So that means we can take the power feed from the reactor vertically straight down the middle there, and we'll make that a vertical shaft that you can see all the way to the bottom of, Star Wars style, to make it look cool. And that'll be lined with all the capacitors and things. So that's going to look pretty epic once it's done. Obviously not for this patch cycle, but I need to sort of proceed with that in mind, so that I'm not kind of putting things in the way of where I need to break through in the future. And then working our way up to the other decks. All of this should pretty much just be a copy paste job all the way up, so we shouldn't have any real difficulty there. Okay, so the first thing we need to do then is map out where the bracing is going to go, and then that will basically tell us where the panels need to go. Yeah, so I was looking at the measurements for that earlier. Again, that'll be the vertical shaft, and then you've got this cavity up here is going to be the like refinery and mining vehicle area, and then you've got the gas harvesting hardware that's going to be underneath there, and the storage tanks for that, and then the rest of it's just framework all the way down. So that's going to be decks H and I underneath there. Okay, so we want G deck framework walls. There's the current bottom of the reactor room. G-deck floors and walls. Yeah, so these are the old panels, which we're going to emulate after a fashion. It's just that the angular bit needs to be more angular than it is there. Okay, so the question then is whether or not we use the existing bracing location. I don't think we will, because it's going to mess with the location of the floor supports. Sadly, no, Delta, it won't be. In order to access the dorsal, it means we need to actually build all the geometry and the stairs and everything to get down there. Well, unless... Hang on, let me just see whether that fits a minute. Because the general idea is that we don't want to be doing anything now which is going to take longer. Yeah, I might be able to just leave that staircase there as is, and then basically just have this as grey box for people to explore. But I can't do anything with it right now. It's just going to have to remain as grey box, and people are probably going to get stuck down there. So I'll look at that at the very, very end. So I think these they're all 30-degree segments, if I recall. So I think what we'll do is we'll line up the wall bracing with the middle of those, ignoring the ones that are on the outside. And I kind of did this specifically so that the inside and the outside could be different, but we do have window frames to think about, so that is going to mess us up a little bit. Yeah. See, in an ideal world, I'd want to line that up, but I don't think I can because of the windows. So we'll use the ones that are there. So to make that easier, if we make all of these unique, then I can just flick them round, and that gives us the internal bit we need. Right, so we make all those unique, and then all we need to do is we capture the middle of that. 1.25. We then grab our vertical brace and just spin it round 180. And that should then be there everywhere we need it. So this is probably going to result in the need to move a couple of things on the power side. So if we turn on G-Deck power. Yeah, some of these guys are going to need moving over ever so slightly to align with the panel. But that's not the end of the world. Hey, three amigos. Right, so the other thing we need to worry about actually is the top section there and the amount that it sticks out. So that should be 10 centimeters, which is the equivalent of about 4 inches if I recall. Yep, thereabouts. Okay, so that panel needs to angle up enough to sort of clear that. And then we also need a panel to go there as well. So if we then look at that. So we need the panel stretched between these 2 points, and these ones all need to be taller to meet that. I'm assuming that one's the same. These guys need redoing as well, actually, to fit the new segmented layout properly. So that side's done, that side isn't, so I can probably just copy paste that around. So that shouldn't be a problem. So they'll line up there. And then we'll replace these braces with the ones from G-Deck. Sorted. I'll make some stubbier versions to go in between, and then that will be our panel alignment there. At the moment, the NPCs should be entirely random. So they should just randomly choose a name and some visuals every single time you start a new game. Eventually, obviously, there'll be a proper crew roster, and you'll be able to edit that roster, before starting a new game, and maybe do some hiring and firing during the game session. But for now, they're just random. Yeah, we we relinquish all responsibility when it comes to what people do with their crews. Right, so I'm going to have to butcher this template, I think. So I want to have a definite visual separation between the different decks in the reactor room as you look up. So I want the deck separation banding along the middle there to sort of definitely stick out visibly, but not to the point where it interferes with the stairs. I think the stairs are quite far away though, so yeah, as long as it doesn't go beyond that gap there, we should be alright. Yeah, when it comes to the whole AI side of things, it's definitely something we'll be looking into. But as I've mentioned frequently, we have a few lines in the sand for that before we'll consider using it properly. Those being that it has to be a locally running model that doesn't murder the GPU while it's running, and that is basically trained on our in-game data so that it has full knowledge of our game universe. I noticed that there was a model released recently which apparently can fit into 500 gigs of RAM, and that's a very interesting one. So something like that is the kind of thing that we would be looking at. I mean, a model that fits into half a gig of RAM, I mean, that's perfect. That's exactly the kind of thing we need. Yeah, the problem is we have to, to some extent work with the lowest common denominator. So, we can't just assume that everyone's got enough RAM to load a whole model into RAM. I mean, a 500 meg model would be perfect, because all we need it for really is just to hold a conversation with the NPCs. It doesn't need to do coding or complex math or anything like that. It's literally just conversational AI, so it doesn't need to be a big model. Sorry, 500 meg, yes. Did I say 500 gig? No, it's a half a gig model. It takes up half a gig of RAM in its entirety. So it's a really, really, really tiny model, and that's the sort of thing that we'd be looking for. The problem with like a 2 to 3 gig model is the game itself takes up about 3 gig of RAM, plus the RAM that Windows takes up. So if you've got a machine that only has 8 gig of RAM, which alarmingly most machines only have 8 gig of RAM, then you're not going to fit a 2 to 3 gig RAM model on those machines. So, we can't go that high with our LLM. Yeah, I mean, the reason we haven't added any kind of AI to the game is for that very reason. Right now it does need a lot of hand-holding, and the results are inconsistent, and we don't want to get to the point where our in-game AI model is talking about things we don't want it to talk about, like suddenly bringing up the Holocaust randomly or something like that. It's a bit of a minefield, which is why we want it trained on our own data, and not exclusively on our own data. Obviously it needs to be capable, but I guess the distillation of the model needs to be on our in-game data, so that the model knows everything about the game. It's been pre-prompted to not talk about anything outside of the game. Obviously that can be jailbroken if someone tries hard enough, but you can pre-prompt it with enough to ensure that it at least makes an effort to stay within the game world. Basically, we don't want it to talk about anything that's off topic. Yeah. I cannot wait for the day that the game has enough content in it that Josh from Let's Game It Out actually wants to play it, or do a video on it. That would be so cool. I would be very excited for that. See, I did add GPT-3 or 3.1 yonks ago to test it within the game, and what I did with that is I basically instructed it to refuse to speak about anything that didn't directly relate to the game, and it actually did fairly well, to be fair, about staying on topic. Yeah, far better than I thought it would. You could still jailbreak it with the right prompting, but it did a reasonably good job at staying on topic. And you could ask it questions like, where is the ship right now? And it would regurgitate, the ship's coordinates and things. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we'd want from it. Yeah, it's the keeping it on task and keeping it from talking about uncomfortable topics that we want to avoid. Yeah, Josh retweeted one of our tweets back when I was testing out the prop system. I filled the lounge with watermelons, and I believe his exact quote was, "I love everything I'm seeing here." So, yeah, fingers crossed for that. Oh yeah, definitely Zylok. it's right now the autopilot doesn't know that there's a planet there, so we need to make sure that we train that behavior in so that it can recognize when something is in the way. And in order to do that, you need to be able to compute like knowledge of the radius of an object given its like location in space. So you need to be able to draw that radius so that the AI knows, well, the autopilot knows that it has to avoid that radius in order to not fly into the planet. It's very mathy, but entirely doable, and yes, it's definitely something that we do want. I want this edge to be like reasonably sharp, but not too sharp. For this. So this one was 2. Okay, so that's what I've just done there, so that should be the same. So that's our top and bottom profile. So these panels are going to be mirrored, top and bottom, which makes life a little bit easier. And then obviously we have our 0.5 there. So hopefully that's enough of like a visual bump. I mean, I've purposefully extended it out beyond the rim of the edge there, but I do wonder whether that might not be a little bit too much. I'll do one and see. Well, funnily enough, Zans, that's exactly where I was going with it. So I talk about this a lot on stream because it's something that it's a possibility that I find really exciting, in that we get an AI model to generate things like entire alien cultures, and then we use some of the wider model capabilities like AI music to be able to produce actual, musical compositions that are unique to a particular alien race, and physical artwork, not just like paintings and things, but also sculptures that are of that alien race and relevant to the history and culture of that alien race. So as you're out there exploring the galaxy, you could quite literally be exploring entire cultures which are fully and entirely fleshed out, as much as you'd ever hope one to be in the environment of a game. So I think that's where the future of AI is going to make a massive difference for us. I think the possibilities there are very, very cool. Hey, Zopbox, welcome back. I haven't played Portal 2 in a long time, but yes, it was one of my favourites for quite some time as I was playing it. Very, very cool game. Ingenious as well for its time. I remember when they first started talking about the Portal series and how the portals actually worked, and it was just mind-blowing, the technology behind the rendering of portals and how seamless they were. Hey Jim, all good, thank you. So if I take this approach, then that means the middle panel can just literally be flat, which makes producing them considerably easier. And then the curvature is provided by the panels above and below. So that should work as is. Let's just copy that one up to see. Oh, autosave. Ew, I don't have an autosave drink prepared. It's our trusty, pretty flat by now Fanta. So that will end up being the profile. Depending on how this reacts to the light sources in the game, I worry that this harsh of an angle might be a bit too much. So we'll just do a couple of panels as a test, and then we'll see whether or not that's what we want. And I think for the sake of simplicity, we will use the corridor snapping points outside to place them, because ordinarily I'd put the snapping points within the room itself, but I think for this one, as we're using the same segment size, I may as well just use the snapping points that are already there, and then I don't have to make new ones. Also means that I can use the path for the corridor segment as well. It's a little bit far away from the panel, but hopefully that won't cause an issue. Something, a stray pixel there somewhere. That's better. Seems happy enough with that. As long as the endpoints stay consistent, we should be good. It's quite a sudden transition. Take a copy of that before I lose it somewhere. Of course, one awkward point to this is that we're going to need like something for these to bolt onto, and if the panel separation is directly in the middle of this, then that becomes easy because you just take a chip out of each side of the panel, and there's your penetration of the panel for bolting onto the wall. But if they're offset, then we can't do that. So I might need to come up with a different approach for that. Maybe a band that goes around the middle so that it doesn't matter what angle they're at then. Yeah, I think a band around the middle is probably the only way that we can do that. Right, let's turn this into a placeable panel, and then we can have a look and see how it actually functions, and most importantly how that lip catches the light in engine, because you can't really tell from here you know, how much it's going to stand out. There, add that to it, and then paste it there again and add that to it, because I'll snap that to the same point too, just for convenience sake. To face the other way, otherwise the panel will be upside down, and we don't want that. Okay, that's that one, and then the same again with this one. Yeah, we're referring to it as the FTL drive because it will do different approaches to FTL. So whilst it starts out doing traditional Alcubierre style warp drive, there will also be hyperspace in the game, artificial wormholes, interdimensional travel. So we're going to be implementing lots of different ways of achieving FTL flight. So by calling it a generic FTL drive and having all the UI panels say FTL, it means it gives us that sort of generic UI titling where we can just swap out how it works without having to redo the UIs and things, or any crew dialogue for that matter. Just grab that so that I'm using consistent naming. So that would be ring 0, G-deck, wall panel, yeah, let's go with that. Oh, sorry, that was my phone. It's Live 360 telling me that someone needs to plug their phone in. Give this a whirl. Try spelling that all again. So again, these are just a test, just to see how this actually looks, so we're not having to go super detailed with it. Oh no, I needed that. Let's turn off fake lighting so we can get an idea of how it actually looks. Right, so we want our G-deck, snap guides on, G-deck interior walls. Borrow that one a minute. And then just change that to reactor room. Let's just do a reactor, can't remember now. And ring 0 reactor. Yeah, there we go. I'll turn off the label for now. harsh line. Let's just try it with the other one. We definitely need to turn up the lighting a bit on some of these lights. It's more the attenuation radius which is lacking. I imagine I've limited that to try and keep it from affecting the corridor too much. Let's change that to 1,000 a minute. It's super bright already. It's trying to brighten these lights a bit without making them too bright. Obviously this is the same material in the corridor and it's much whiter. This is picking up a lot of blue, to be fair, from the lights there, so it's going to look colder anyway. Yeah, because if I was to fake the blue lighting, it does kind of lighten it up a bit. These eventually will have alert strips on them when I do them properly. Okay, so let's set these to 3,500 then. And so basically we're just adding an extra 1,000 units. Increase those attenuation radiuses as well, just to make sure that we're pushing that light out a bit further. Someone was mentioning that the game is a lot darker in this version compared to the current demo, so I will see if I can brighten it up a little bit where possible. Yeah, that's definitely looking brighter now. Definitely brighter. Jesus, okay, that's like super bright. Okay, maybe these guys in particular don't need to be quite that bright. Interesting that it's not scrolling to that actor. Why is it not scrolling to the actor? Like, everything else scrolls to the actor. Why do they not scroll to the actor? Weirdness. So that's reactor room inner. That one. Let's turn that one down a bit. Doesn't need to have quite as much of an attenuation radius, and doesn't need to be quite that bright either. To have to definitely reapproach how I do these lights. Obviously, the reason that I have done just a single panel covering the whole thing is purely out of laziness to do it quickly, rather than having to go through and model like a full light fitting. But yeah, that does not look good, so that needs sorting out. But the actual light emission itself, I think that's bearing in mind we don't have the blue, I think that's a decent level of lighting. And I think yeah, it doesn't look too bad from this angle, but from down here, that it's quite a harsh line across there. I think that would probably look nicer if it was just a little bit less harsh. So rather than going at a literal 45 degrees, maybe make that like 30 or even 20. Just soften that curve, and that'll look a bit nicer. Let's just try duplicating that on this side a minute. See how it looks with the stairs. Yeah, so the look I was going for was, as you traverse up and down the stairs, I wanted it to be visually obvious that this was a separation between decks. So rather than it just being a straight flat wall, there's some kind of visual clue there that, you know, the structure of the ship is such that you're now passing between the deck separation point as you go up and down. But I think that's too harsh of a lump going around there. So yeah, we'll definitely smooth that out. I think these flat panels can stay as they are. There's not a lot we can do with them anyway. And to be honest, we may as well go ahead and kind of roll that out across the rest of here, because this is going to be their final home. Don't worry, Tagol. Claire asks me that every single day. Like, are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? And the answer to that is, like, really, really soon. In fact, I don't want to commit to it because obviously we're still bug fixing and some bugs might take longer than we hope to fix. But it would be really, really, really nice if we could go live on Sunday and make Sunday's stream the go live stream, which means I have 4 days to fix all the bugs and finish off what I'm doing right now. But yeah, it's a valid question. Yeah, for sure. The pressure's needed, though. It's very, very much needed. Right, for these panels here, I'm going to basically take that same panel and then move its origin point up. So again, this will attach to the same socket as the other ones. Yeah, how nice would it be if we could just go live on stream on Sunday? That would be very, very cool and very, very welcomed. Yeah. Caveat obviously being that we get the bugs fixed. We've got about 3.5 hours left on this stream, so we can get plenty done tonight. could have copied the other ones down to the location we need them to be in, but I'd rather these exist as separate objects so that we can customize them and change their scale, because I'm pretty sure they're not going to remain the same size as all the other ones. Make sure that we're getting the absolute accurate light directions. Well, actually, one thing the new demo is going to need is a video overview, basically me explaining on camera, what's in the demo update, why it's taken us a year, and what that year represents in terms of development time. Because I think, on the surface of it, it doesn't look like we've done much in a year. Despite the fact we have overhauled practically everything, like from the ground up. It doesn't look like we've done a lot, so I need to make sure that I cover that in some kind of video. It also annoys me that that's not in the middle. Walk away, Dan, walk away. Thank you, Festus. I shall ensure that Claire gets some chocolate. Although I bought her some shoes today, so that can help cover that. Right, let's see if we can't soften that edge. Thank you, Delta. More money for the shoe fund and the chocolate fund, obviously. Ah, okay. I don't think I have touched BRC deck. No, I'm pretty sure I haven't touched BRC, so I think you're safe. I've not really left engineering. Yeah, a lot of effort. And you're right, AJ. I think a lot of the work we've been doing has been sort of preparation work for, when we start adding new features. Like, the whole point of segmenting the ship is so we can do fire spread and damage. And, that was a job that needed doing. It's one of those jobs that, you just had to get on with. The other thing I wanted to look at is whether or not that's stuck out enough. Or does it stick out too much? That's another question. It's an awkward one, this, because, you know, I do want this to be chunky, and that's far from chunky. It's quite flat against the wall, but at the same time, it's already hovering, you know, a distance away from the metalwork, and when we do the actual physical bracket that goes here to hold it, that's obviously going to have to stick out further. So, you know, from that sense, it might be better if that was further back. Okay, so we know we're better off leaving. What kind of a gap have we got there? Yeah, I think it's a decent enough lip there that we'll leave. But that needs softening a little bit. Is that too big? So it's only 20 centimeters, which is only really like the height of a domestic stair step. So you know, it's not really a huge distance. And if we do our usual 2 centimeter chamfer on there, like, is that too flimsy looking? Okay, so the idea here is to get rid of that harsh edge whilst keeping the bump. So we'll see whether we have achieved that. Why has it put it over there? Oh, I see what I did. Right, if I copy that and then paste it in place, I'm going to move it up a little bit. 100. And then make it unique. Oh, it's not even a component. Even better. Yeah, so if we pop that in there, get rid of that one, move that back down 100 units, move that up 100 units, should give us the panel in the right place. At least it would if that was the right way around. That's better. Yeah, okay, that's definitely more what I was going for. I guess it's always going to look a little bit linear, being that it's like one of the number one rules with design is that you don't have all these parallel lines everywhere, because it's too predictable and ugly on the eye. I mean, I could move those over half a panel and kind of brickwork them a little bit. That might break that up. But yeah, I think I prefer the more subtle edge to that rather than the sharp one. It's probably going to mess me up with the door frame, but yeah, I do prefer it. Yeah, they definitely could be a different material. They're going to have to be broken up a little bit anyway, because again, because we've got this attachment point, I might have to bring them down so they only start there and then do something else above, so we've got a place to attach these. Yeah. See, the other option is to not have an individual panel between and just extend this up halfway and keep that as one solid panel, but they're already pretty huge. But yeah, I'm happy with that. Just need to undo some of that work I did, because of course we need to turn it into a template now. Right, so if we grab that edge, normally I have a little template spot that I grab to be able to place these. I think I shall place that there. The trick is I'm not UV unwrapping it. All of the materials are tiling materials, so unless it's something like a prop that actually requires its own unique material, none of it gets UV unwrapped. Do you mean like these floors, AJ? I'm going to be doing more of that style of flooring once we start adding all the pipes and things coming in. So obviously we have the pipes working logically, but they're not physically routed yet. So once we have the physical routing, which will be coming obviously from here through under the floors, then we'll put grating in the floors so you can see the pipes. Yeah, I don't see why not. We definitely want engineering to be as exposed as much as possible. Yeah, you'll find that most of the ship's geometry PyCore is using the same material instances. So, like the material that we're using to do these wall panels is like every single wall panel in the game is using that exact same material instance. So it's only a single texture lookup. And I mentioned it on the previous stream, but we're using a kind of fake triplanar mapping on these meshes. So it only requires a single material lookup to do the triplanar mapping. But what it won't do is the blend that you normally get on edges with triplanar mapping. These particular materials do it so well anyway that you can't tell, but like, yeah, you can tell on that edge a little bit. I mean, you need to really to zoom in to see the join, but there's a join there, which if it was true triplanar mapping, that join wouldn't be there. It would kind of blend those edges together. But yeah, you do get like that line down there, but you can only really see it if you're up close, which means we can do world scale texturing. So like the little circles on all of these panels are globally always the same size, in the same way that the bumps and things on these wall panels are globally always the same size, as is the like the brushed steel effect. So that brushed texture is always the same scale, regardless of which mesh you're looking at. So like, you know, all of this is using that material, and you can see it's all the same scale globally. Which, if everything had individual UV mapping, you know, you'd have to go to a lot of effort to make that be the same scale globally. Thank you. I don't have any carpet to hand right now, but it's much more useful on carpet because, you know, where you've got carpets joining together, you want that carpet material to always be consistent, and this kind of allows that. Yeah, I started off doing everything with world-aligned materials, which costs more because basically you're having to hit the texture 3 times rather than once. So you're doing, you know, for every surface you render, you're doing 3 material lookups. So it's not like super less performant, but it is less performant. But a hell of a lot more convenient. Right, so let's extrude these ones then. Where is my guide? There it is. So we'll grab our path. Maybe, if it lets me. Before I soften all of that, I may as well copy this across to there and the other side. Hang on, too much world geometry in my way. Let's get rid of these F bits. Yeah, so we don't have to redo that a second time. Let's rotate that. So that will do is for both the door and the window, because they have the same base underlying frame panel. And we'll also copy it to there as well, because we also need a plain one. So copy that round to there. Different scale template on the outside, that didn't help at all. Do it this way instead. Oh, autosave, always at the worst time. We've got the right number of thingies here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it's wrong number. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, there's loads here. Okay, so let's get rid of these a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then number 6 hidden under there. Checking the join. Yep, looks spot on. Oh, you mean down there? Yeah, it's when you consider how big a person is walking along a corridor, that is a long way down. That's like a, what was it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's like at least a 15 or 16 story building, like all the way down. And we'll have that completely open. So, like when you're standing on this grating here, looking down, you'll be looking down that entire shaft. So, extremely vertigo inducing, and I shall go to extra effort to make it as vertigo inducing as possible. We want that kind of epic Star Wars thing where you're kind of looking over the edge at a really deep shaft, and we'll have the direct power output from the reactor going straight down there. Because I think what we'll do, like operationally on the ship, because I was thinking about this earlier and how we can kind of gamify some of the elements of how the reactor works. and in some ways not even gamify, but perhaps make it even more realistic in, when you want to bring on the FTL drive, like the amount of power needed to run the FTL drive is just like astonishingly huge. So it should be using the entirety of the reactor's output to power the FTL. So if we use the reactor under normal operating conditions for recharging the ship's batteries, for powering the shields and the weapons and that sort of thing, that's kind of like standard operation mode. And then if you want to engage the FTL drive, then it shunts all the power away from those systems and puts it basically straight into the coils, which means this shaft running down here becomes like literally direct output from the reactor all the way down into the FTL rings, which means the ship's batteries won't be charging whilst the FTL drive is active, because you're just drawing all the power from the reactor. And I think that just makes it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more switching that's needed depending on which mode the ship's running in. Right, so we need to cut the door frame through there. So do I make it a porthole style door, or do I make it a normal style door? That is the question. I would say so, PT88, yeah, because the FTL is going to work by way of a bunch of capacitors. So this spine that goes down the middle, that's basically going to be filled with capacitor banks, and on the outside here you'll see like heat sinks all the way down the side. So these will be kind of black grills going all the way down each side, and we'll probably have those glow as well whilst the FTL is working, just to give it a bit more visual interest. And the idea is that the reactor is just ploughing its energy into these capacitors, and then these capacitors are providing a constant energy source for the rings. So I mean, you could argue that if the reactor's not running full tilt, then can you siphon some of that energy off? But I guess it's just, in terms of keeping the game interesting and keeping engineering gameplay interesting, if the ship has to be configured for FTL differently to combat or normal flight, then you're having something to do within an engineering environment. And I think realistically that is probably what it would be like. So if the ship is being put into FTL, there's probably a whole bunch of things you have to configure specifically for that, not least of which shunting the reactor's power somewhere more useful. Yeah, so the spinning rings idea is totally doable. The main issue with that is that each of those ring segments needs to be something you can repair and replace. If you burn out an FTL coil, you need to be able to go and pull it out and replace it with a new one. So having the ring spin makes that more complicated. But not insurmountable, because all we do is we just attach all of the individual segment actors to one actor, which we just then rotate with them all attached. I need to profile performance on seeing how much performance it takes, because you're talking about, I think it's 200 and something coils per ring side, and you're having to then move 200 or so actors together with a single attached actor. So yeah, if if the performance profiling comes out okay, then yes, we can have rotating rings. But probably only on this ship, because the future ship designs are either going to have a flatter ring or a split ring. So it's going to be like, you know, two bananas attached to the ship rather than the full ring. A bit like the Asgard ships in Stargate. Yeah, I think having the rings counter-rotate as you're flying, I think it's clunky, it's mechanical, and I think it helps kind of explain the low-tech nature of the Magellan class. Like, again, this is the first time humanity's ever built a ship that can go these speeds. So having a really kind of clunky rotating ring, and you know, you've got the alien races going, look, they need to rotate their rings, noobs. So, you know, with future designs, we'll have a static FTL field and not a full ring. So it's, you know, smaller and sleeker and generally nicer looking. But not warp nacelles, because that would be bad. Right, let's do the window, shall we? Just going to borrow this floor template to set me angle right. Yes, Firstus, I think we'll have a much finer granular control over the reactor at some point. You know, the reactor we have right now is literally just kind of like version 1 of the design. So, you know, we definitely want to expand on that and push what you can do with it a lot more. We want the reactor main UI to be a lot more detailed as well. You know, lots of graphs and you know, power level readings and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, we'll also have, because we want to penalize the player for leaving the reactor on full. So what we don't want is the player to just set the reactor to 100% and leave it there, because you know, you're generating way more power than the ship will ever need. So I think what we'll do is we'll vent that out as plasma. So you've got this highly energized plasma that the reactor is generating, and we'll just literally just vent that out of the ship. So if that power is not being used, then we just expel it in some other way. Yeah, so we'll vent it and wear out reactor components. Obviously, the higher you have the reactor turned up, the more it's going to wear out anyway, naturally over time. And we're tying fuel efficiency into reactor power as well. So the higher you turn up the reactor, the hotter it gets, and therefore the less efficiently it uses its fuel. So if you wanted to like if you're running low on fuel reserves and you're trying to limp your way to a gas giant to refuel, then going there more slowly is more fuel efficient than kind of burning rubber the whole way. That's true. You'll get the anti-space pollution police turn up and say, stop venting crap all over the galaxy, please. Like those aliens in Voyager in that void space. Yes, AJ. So that's already part of the plan. It's funny because I set the reactor up originally to fail more frequently the higher you turn it up. So the higher you turn it up, the hotter it gets, and therefore the more likely it's going to shut down. And this weird thing happened where it actually self-regulated itself. So it's like the hotter it was getting, the more it was reducing its fuel usage. So then it was cooling itself down, and like the whole thing became self-aware somehow. It was like I couldn't make it shut itself down. It just always fixed itself. So I actually had to break that in order for it to shut itself down when it gets too hot. But yeah, we'll be doing pretty much exactly that. So as we want it to be organic. We don't want like a digital reactor. We want it to be a really organic experience. So all of the different stats and statistics for the reactor need to kind of interplay with one another, so they all affect each other. So like temperature affects fuel usage, and the amount of fuel being pumped through it also affects temperature, and then the efficiency of the fuel burning is based on temperature and reactor power, and just have everything affect everything else. So it's a really organic system, and that way, and because it's simulated as well, it means that there are options for gameplay there and capabilities that are naturally part of the system which aren't programmed into it. Because it's organic and simulated, it means that players will be finding solutions and workarounds which we're not programming into it. So I think that's like an exciting aspect of it. Hey Atlantic, how you doing? Yeah, exactly, AJ. We want players to think about the hardware and how it's working, and in some cases why it's working. I'd like player engineers who really know their stuff to stand out in the community as people that really know their stuff. Like right now, you can kind of be a bit of a hero if you join a multiplayer game and the reactor's offline and like you're the only one that knows how to turn it back on again, because it is quite a convoluted process to turn it back on, and any new players that haven't been through the tutorial are literally clueless as to how to get the reactor started. And we want to encourage that kind of real world in-game knowledge, that because it's so complicated, not everyone's going to know how to do it, or like in the case of Claire, for example, like really doesn't care about engineering, like it's not her thing, so she'll never play as an engineer on the ship. So if something goes wrong, she needs someone like me to come on and say, right, this needs to be on and that needs to be switched that way, and because that's not her thing. And it'll be the same for different roles across the ship. Like when we do all the tactical systems and we start doing the weapons and the shields and everything, there will be people who just don't care about that side of the game. So when something like that needs manning, then they will be calling upon people that are interested in that and do know what they're doing. And I think it's important to encourage that real world skill set as opposed to like an artificial skill set within the game. Yeah, there's something special about a cold start sequence. I've always loved it from playing like Microsoft Flight Simulator or X-Plane. just that feeling of having started up a complex piece of machinery. It's rewarding on some kind of like deep psychological level. Oops, wrong there. What did that one? I think it's fair to say that if, at any time your reactor is generating more power than you're using, it needs to vent somewhere. And you'll have the start capacitors, or rather the emergency backup power as it now is. That's going to need recharging, and the ship's batteries are going to need recharging. So if all the ship's batteries are charged and the emergency backup is fully charged, then there is literally nowhere else for that power to go, so it needs to be vented overboard by way of energized plasma. Ultimately, yes, that is what you need to do. So the idea is that as part of the engineering gameplay, the reactor is going to be something that needs to be managed. So if you just run around with your reactor on full the whole time, then you're going to be wasting fuel and you're going to be burning out components. So whoever's in charge of engineering kind of needs to be mindful of that, and when the ship is going to go to FTL, be sure to turn the reactor up to make that power available to the helm, and then when the ship isn't at FTL, turn the reactor back down again to match the ship's current energy requirements. So the reactor is a thing that will need kind of constant management as part of the engineering role, which would probably be like the chief engineer role. Although, with the way that we're planning to handle tasks for engineering crew and other roles across the ship, with engineering specifically, the ship will have like various states. So, like FTL, or FTL ready, would be a ship state. So if you set the ship to FTL ready, then the NPC crew will scuttle around and make sure that the ship is FTL ready, and part of that will be turning the reactor up and shunting power to where it needs to be, like closing the breakers to the weapons and the shields, and making sure that power is fully available to the FTL. That'll be part of setting the ship to that ready state. So the engineering control room will be pretty self-contained in terms of what it has access to. So the idea is that it's going to have a holo display like the one on the bridge, and you'll be able to pull up a three-dimensional ship, big hollow ship right in front of you, and all of the ship systems will be there in 3D. So if you've ever seen the Passengers movie, they've got this really cool scene where like faults and things are popping up on the holo display and then obviously repairing themselves in that film. But we want something similar. So like if a particular cable run, for example, is faulty, then that physical line where that cable runs needs to be flashing red on the holo display, so you can immediately see, right, that cable's broken, it's affecting these systems. So we can have anything downstream of that cable also flashing red, in 3D, to kind of visually describe what the problem is. And I think that's going to look very, very cool. And obviously that will be available on the bridge as well. So if the captain brings up the engineering display using the captain's little control panel that he's got, then he'll have access to that same information. Essentially, the reactor control room is going to be the backup bridge. Sorry, not the reactor control room, the engineering control room. So it'll have everything in it that the bridge has, other than a window. So it will only have a data-driven view of space around the ship. Basically, yeah, instrument only flight. So you'll have all of the nav data, even close range sensors available on the holo display. So if you're having to navigate through, say, an asteroid field, then you'll see that on the holo display in 3D. You won't have a window to look out of, but you'll definitely have enough data to be able to fly the ship. I also like the way it's depicted in... I can't remember the name of the film now. Pandora, Blue Aliens, that one. They have a holo display there as well, which is really cool. It'll be really good for bringing up surface details. So once we get to the point where we are rendering surfaces, it would be particularly epic to be able to like putting some grid coordinates and actually see it in 3D on the holo display. And if the holo display, if the surface environment and the holo display are basically driven by the same back-end system, then they should match, which would be very cool. One of the exciting things about getting core systems done is that once we have these systems in place, we can start expanding them and adding new capabilities. Down track, yeah. I do want to do that. Obviously, we've got 8 battery rooms on the ship, 2 per quadrant, and yes, you'd want to be able to use like a quadrant's second supply to power another quadrant that maybe have lost both its battery rooms. So I'm probably going to put like a switchboard of sorts in engineering somewhere where you can cross wire those systems. Obviously there's definitely a desire to be able to run cables manually around the ship, and yes, we would like to do that, but we can't really do that until we have the ability to physically plug in and unplug cables and actually do the physical running around of them. There's some physics to sort out with that. We'd probably just fire line traces at the floor and then draw a spline and then draw the cable along that spline as you're running around. So basically you'd be pooing out a cable as you run around the ship. So if you were to run around in circles, then you'd be literally laying a spiral of cable on the floor. So we can definitely do that. It's definitely within the realm of feasibility. But we'd have to also have it work out what's connected to what. So we'd have to sort of dynamically manage the fact that box A is now plugged into box B. So if you switch the breaker over, it needs to send the power that way. So it is going to add extra complication to the system, but at some point, yes, we want players to be able to come up with unique, novel engineering solutions to complex problems. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess the way that it's all been wired together is it's kind of like a tree structure, I suppose. It's a daisy chain of electrical connections, but also with a tree-like pattern. So the closer to the root of the tree you break something, the more stuff that's going to get affected by that. Maybe. The problem is we're we're simulating electricity itself, so that's not how electricity works. So it would have to be handled by way of an actual physical switchboard somewhere. I mean, we could have some kind of logical separation on a switchboard where the system decides which breakers are priority and then shuts them down if there's not enough power. So if you're in a brownout situation, it will shut down non-essential breakers. Yeah, the server room's up there. Can't see it right now because I've got the lights turned off. Hang on. Super light. Right, so this is actually the server room. So the server room spans 2 decks, and this will house the main computer, all the data storage, and also physical servers. So like here we've got like the planetary texture generation, the galaxy generation, and our SQL server. All of that is going to be run by physically present servers within the game world, and I'm doing that largely as a joke because it's this weird meta thing to have the galaxy gen be a server on the ship that's in the galaxy. So we'll just have one of the server racks, like a little green flashy light when the galaxy's generating, just for the fun of it. But everything else, yeah, so things like the shields, the weapons, the FTL, like every major ship system will have an associated server rack doing stuff. And if those servers break, then whatever it is they're serving won't work. And we'll also have data cables in the same way we have electrical cables. So if a data cable is severed between, like, let's say the RCS thrusters. So the RCS thrusters will have a server rack, and there will be data cables coming out of that rack going to each of the individual RCS thrusters. If that data cable is severed, then those RCS thrusters will no longer receive the data input to turn on and off. So if they're firing and you take a hit and then that data cable is severed, then they'll just continue firing until you've fixed the cable to tell them to turn off, which means the ship's just going to be spinning until you fixed it. So again, it's like building it physically and having physical cable runs means that you end up in scenarios that you can't possibly program. Like it's so organic that failures cause events in unique ways which are like infinitely varied, because it depends. Like if you're in combat, it'll be different every single time because you're going to get hit in different places every single time, and where you get hit determines how badly your ship is damaged. Because if you're just taking impacts in like where the crew quarters are, then the crew quarters may lose power and they may lose lighting, but that's not going to affect the ship from running. So it's nicely organic the way it all works. Yes, most systems are in duplicate. So physical redundancy is definitely something that's built into it, but not too much, because like the engineering systems and the bridge have quadruple redundancy, and you'll notice the breaker panel on the bridge takes its power from all 4 quadrants. So like all 8 battery rooms are all powering the bridge. And the same with the engineering, reactor room and everything. So, the bridge is very, very difficult to break power for, because you'd literally have to lose power on all 4 quadrants before the bridge lost power. So yeah, in many places we perhaps have too much redundancy because it makes the ship perhaps a little bit too tough, but yeah, I guess it just is what it is. That would be funny for us, just, but sadly no. Oh, definitely AJ. Yeah. We'll have much cable porn, I assure you. Hey, Celtic. I never know whether it's Celtic or Celtic. Which one is it? Yeah, when it comes to physically controlling access, we will have that once we have our engineering codes. Like up here on F deck, you could close this bulkhead, lock it, and then only see people with the engineering code can unlock this door and walk through it, which means that no one would have access to the battery rooms or access to get into the maintenance tunnels, because this is all behind bulkheads. I mean, you could lock this one instead even. So they could look through the window, but they can't get past the bulkhead. So we'll have engineering codes, internal security codes, and command codes that control access to different things aboard the ship. And we want to be able to essentially lock down engineering. So if you're starting a public server and you've got other players randomly joining you, you don't want those players to suddenly run down to engineering and start trolling the ship. So by locking all of the engineering doors and bulkheads, if you choose to, then you can stop that from happening. You're right, Zockbox, every time. Yeah, there are bulkheads everywhere now. So like every corridor curve will now have a bulkhead midway along it, even like here. So there are bulkheads all over the place. The only place there isn't a bulkhead is on the Ring 1 corridor, and I've debated it at length, and at some point we might end up with a Ring 1 bulkhead, but it makes access to things awkward. So yeah, it would mean not having a central door to these rooms, so we'd have to offset the entrance to whatever room this is, like with the battery rooms. So we no longer have a centralized door to the battery room. We'd have to offset it to one side, because we've got a bulkhead in the middle. So we'd have to do that to these rooms as well, which isn't the end of the world, but yeah, it's just something that would need to happen. So yeah, we might end up with a bulkhead there. To be honest, the most awkward one's the reactor room, because like all around the reactor room we've got devices and power and stuff running, so the only place the door really can go is there. If we were to move the door to one side, we'd have to squeeze the door in here between the rest of the stuff, which would be awkward. So maybe we can put bulkheads in everywhere except this corridor here. Yeah, so when it comes to exactly that, Anasi, the way we're going to have it in the future with multiplayer, and obviously this is quite a few patches down the line, when you join a multiplayer game, If it's the first time you've been on that ship, then you will spawn in the shuttle bay, and you will just be a generic recruit in that shuttle bay until you are assigned a role aboard that ship by either the player who has been given the captain role or the server host. So access to roles aboard the ship will be physically given to new players. Otherwise, they're just recruits with no access to anything. That's probably the easiest way to gatekeep people into the game. We also will optionally add the ability to basically keep new players in the shuttle bay until they've received a role. We'll make that something you can turn on or off. But the idea is, random troll joins game. They are now stuck in the shuttle bay, having just arrived on your ship, and will have no role and no ability to leave that shuttle bay until you have granted access to your vessel, and then they can, introduce themselves and get themselves a role. There's only so much you can do to prevent trolls. Trolls are going to troll, but we'll try and add as much as we can to limit the impact. Lose some panels there, so oh yeah. Hadn't put any up there yet, that's why. Okay, that's better. Ah, yes, the old SketchUp question. Yeah, it certainly can be. But I guess I've been doing it for so many years now, it's just kind of second nature. I mean, there's a lot of complex curves and things around most of this stuff. Right, so we'll cut a door through there now. So this is going to be an awkward one because unlike the other rooms, we're not just cutting it out onto a corridor like this, where we've got a floor to work from. We've got a step down, and we've got this other panel underneath. So I'll try cutting it straight through, but I think we might need to change this step slightly and how that works. Before we do that though, let's just copy that template over so I don't lose it. Make sure that's still physically lined up. Yeah, still in the middle. Right then, so we need that. We need to find our midpoint for this segment, which would be there. Then we'll grab that door template, pop that there. how far off of this are we? I believe that's 1.5. So copy that, get rid of that. Bring that out 1.5. That should line up with that edge, which it doesn't, so it needs to be smaller. It's an interesting one. Ah, 1.25. Okay. Just wanted to make sure this lines up with the edge of the curve there. Which means, again, we don't need the rest of it, so copy that, get rid of that, pop that back in. Then we need 4 centimeters for the panel, 0.5 for the rubber bit. Don't need the edges. Okay. Grab this, so we've got our extent. Thank you. Yeah, I think attention to detail is definitely something I obsess over. Like that, not extruding properly, is something that I'm currently obsessing over. It's better. Okay, pull that out by 0.5. Right, so then we'll intersect all of that with itself. should do it. I think, yeah, I mean, I'd consider making a ship for Star Trek Online. I mean, obviously, it would have to wait until all the other things I have to do are done. So we're talking years, but yeah, I'd find that interesting. I started off my modelling career doing the Enterprise refit, so yeah, I'd be up for that. I actually know one of the people that used to work there, a guy called Donny Versager. He works for the Roddenberry project now, but he did a bunch of the ships for Star Trek Online. And he started off as a hobbyist on the Trek BBS forums, the same as me. And he's an incredibly talented guy, way better than I am, pretty much in every way. So they snapped him up to work on the game. But just goes to show, if you're a hobbyist and you're doing good work, then you will get headhunted. Just got to put yourself out there. Thank you, Simon. I shall add that to Claire's chocolate fund. No, I don't regret them taking him on at all. I mean, I was jealous at the time, definitely, but I was still just starting out in my modelling career back then. I wouldn't have been able to do the job. No, I don't think Star Trek Online's stagnating anything. I mean, we've had a couple of big Star Trek titles. Can't remember the name of them off the top of my head, but there's been a couple recently, a couple of like narrative ones. So I don't think it's hindering the market at all. Ultimately, if someone comes up with a good game idea, then the game will get made, assuming that the investors are happy with it. But there's a thing with Star Trek games in that they are generally never any good. Like, other than like a Voyager Elite Forces, I mean, what actually good Star Trek games have we ever had? Was it Fleet Command, the one where you had like an isometric view of the ship? Or was that Bridge Commander? Perhaps I'm thinking Bridge Commander. I remember that being good. Like, the combat in Star Trek Online is like basically that. But yeah, I remember that one being good. And yeah, again, Voyager Elite Forces. But other than that, I think every Star Trek game I've ever played has just not lived up to expectations. Thank you, Maury. Honestly, I was bricking it through the entire presentation. Yeah, modding this game is going to be difficult because of the complexity involved with how the ships are built. Like, I'm currently making a door panel, and this is just one panel of thousands of panels. So, if you wanted to mod a whole brand new starship in this game, I mean, you'd have to go through the whole process that I go through, like with every single panel on the ship. I mean, we're talking years of work to do a single starship. It's not impossible, but yeah, we're talking a lot of work. They're not just a 3D mesh of a ship that flies around. They have full interiors, and that's a difficult thing to mod. What I am doing though is I'm trying to template this as much as possible, so that it might be at some point in the future we could do like full visual overhauls of a ship interior where we replace every single panel. Because if I can create like an FBX file that has all the panels in it, like labeled by like deck and location, then someone who wanted to model that and replace them all could literally go panel by panel, making sure that they remodel those panels whilst keeping the bolt holes in the same location, and all the scales and everything right for the panel, and the curvature right for where it is on the corridor. So yeah, I mean, at some point maybe. We already have a mod file that will be in the upcoming demo update, so you can add your own star systems already to the game. There will be an actual in-game tool for that as well. So right now the mod file is just a SQLite database, just a local file that you can open and mod. But when we add the in-game tool, you'll be able to create as many star systems as you like locally, and they'll exist for you locally and for any games that you start in multiplayer. But beyond that, it's going to be difficult because yeah, with the procedural nature of the galaxy and the complexity of all the systems, it's just a difficult game to mod. I started coding, Maury, when I was 5 years old with my mum. We had a Commodore 64, and there are these magazines, a series of magazines called Input, and they used to have like code snippets you could type in every time the magazine came out. So we'd sit there literally on our lounge floor in front of the TV, typing away lines of code on the Commodore 64. So that was my introduction to coding. I did do C++ at college back in the 90s, but I've forgotten pretty much everything I learned back then. So now everything I do is self-taught, basically. Lots of YouTube tutorials, lots of reading forums, just self-educating. VR is something I shall be working on immediately after this demo update. It's the very next thing on my to-do list. I think the thing with Star Wars, Anasi, is that Star Wars is all about the pew-pew. So, you have a ship and you go shoot at other ships. That's pretty much Star Wars in a nutshell, isn't it? It's just, it's an action genre. Star Trek's not that kind of thing. So it's more difficult to make a quality Star Trek game because it's not just fly around shooting stuff. I guess that's why Voyager Elite Force was so good, because, for the most part, you were just running around shooting Borg and such. So, it was a good game because it was a good first-person shooter, and it wasn't, I don't know, it didn't fall into that trap that a lot of Star Trek games fall into, where they're just boring, or taking themselves too seriously, or whatever other problem they might have. I think also, arguably, the Star Wars universe is easier to make games about. There have been many good Star Wars games. So yeah, I am going to have to modify this a bit. Yeah, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter back in the day was absolutely amazing. Zeph Noli, yeah, so one of the things that is a limiting factor right now is the fact that the character locomotion system we have doesn't support characters walking upside down, and that's something we want to resolve. So once we have the ability to align the player's gravity to any arbitrary direction, then we can have ring stations, we can have like O'Neill cylinders, we can have lots of different styles and shapes of space station, and indeed ring ships that don't have artificial gravity. But the prerequisite to that is having a character that can walk on ceilings. And we also need that for being able to walk upside down on the hull of the ship as well. So if you're repairing something underneath, we want to be able to walk around underneath the ship using mag boots or whatever gravity system we might have. So yeah, once we have that ability, then definitely we can make spinning stations. Yeah, those input magazines were amazing. Yeah, I think it's fair to say there's a lot of Star Trek games I haven't played. I mean, I tried downloading one on my mobile about a year ago and just deleted it after about a day because it was just frustrating. But then I haven't really gamed much over the past few years. Ever since I became a developer, I kind of stopped gaming. It's difficult to find the time. Shut up, phone. I see the problem. This is going to require some fiddling. You, and you. Yeah, so make you lot into a group. And then that. To round those without messing anything else up. Okay, good. And then we can reincorporate that. Get the weird edges out of the way. Do that edge there. And that should be aligned to that. lost a face there somewhere. Have a good one, CSI. Sleep well. Right. Oh yeah, bolt holes. Always bolt holes. Okay, so we can get back in the reactor room now. Right, so we're going to need a copy of that. Sorry, my phone keeps going off. I need to get a new phone actually. I've got an old Android and it's become painfully slow to do anything. Like, painfully slow. Huzzah. Nice to have some paneling back in here. I'm not particularly fussy with my fandoms. I mean, I love Star Wars, I love Star Trek, I love Stargate. Anything that starts with Star, really, apart from Babylon 5, which is arguably my favourite of them all. I think for all of its lack of CGI, Babylon 5 is the greatest sci-fi epic ever written. It's just so good. Yeah, Walter Koenig was amazing in Babylon 5. The way he portrayed Bester was just so good. It really showed his abilities as an actor as well. Yeah, Stargate Universe, that hurt. That really did hurt. There are some nice, cobbled together ending stories for Stargate Universe based on what the writers have said and what their plans were for the series. I think my favourite one is what's his face? Why can't I remember any names this evening? It's because I'm concentrating on this, isn't it? It will come to me. Eli. Yeah, Eli. So Eli manages to survive 3 years in a shuttle by siphoning power off of Destiny and storing food and stuff in it, and because he can't fix the final stasis pod, so he's got literally no choice but just to survive in a shuttle, and occasionally going down to planetary services for supplies and things. I think that would be really good. I don't know how well the show would hold up with it basically just being Eli, but yeah, that would be an interesting one to watch. Well, arguably my wife is worse in that she watched season 1 of Babylon 5, said it was rubbish and didn't watch the rest. I mean, that's grounds for divorce if ever I've heard it. One does not simply speak ill of Babylon 5. I think the problem Babylon 5 has with modern audiences is that the CGI is so old and basic that it can be distracting. Cheap sets, bad CGI, and for a modern audience who are used to things like Andor or whatever, it's a hard watch. But if you watch it for the characters and you watch it for the story and you can see past all of the cheese, then it's just incredible. The story and the character development is just amazing. Oh, I agree. Yeah, season 1 of Babylon 5 is, especially the first episode, everyone is so cringy. The acting is awful in the first episode. But yeah, you just need to get through season 1 and then it's just a joyride from there on in. think they're trying to make Dune the next big sci-fi franchise, but there's not really a lot you can do with it. Like, every time they redo Dune, it's the same story over and over. I mean, we've had what? We had the original film, we've had like the miniseries, we've had like 2 modern takes on the Dune movies. It's just, it's always the same every single time. I don't think there's a lot you can do with that story. Talking about a Stargate game, that is something that I would loved to have tackled. I think with procedural generation and the tools we have today, I think you could make a very, very good Stargate game, because like every time you step through that Stargate, you are procedurally generating an entirely new world. No differently to how I'm going to be procedurally generating worlds in this game. So, you know, if you get rid of the starship and just plonk some Stargates around the place, then you're literally just generating a surface, teleporting the player to it. And if you do your procedural generation right, it can be different every time. And, you know, you could do galactic exploration the way we're doing it without the flaff of having to fly a spaceship around. So arguably, it's even easier than this. It's true. Yeah, I mean, the actual worlds portrayed in Stargate were all very, very samey. And I think you could have a lot more fun with that in a game environment. I guess they were limited by sets and outdoor environments in the way that a game wouldn't be. Yeah, it basically would be No Man's Sky. I guess No Man's Sky with Gould. So I think you'd have to set it in a time period where the System Lords were still in power. Something's not right there. That's more like it. Wow, look at those normals though, they need fixing. Let's get those done as well, as a matter of course. Okay, so basically we need to do a wider version of these panels for the backboard there. This one's probably going to be customized anyway, because you've got, in fact we turn it on, we've got the like HVAC conduit running up there and all sorts of stuff. So imagine this panel behind here. It's going to have like cable runs and things on it. and at the very least some kind of bracketing for these. Yeah, these don't really line up anymore, but that's that is a future problem that will need solving. These just need moving a tiny bit. Oh, I knew there's a reason why that wasn't a window. That would be why. I was thinking to myself the other day, it's like, why have I got 4 windows at the top but only 2 at the bottom? And yeah, it's because of this box. Right, so those windows can go. Put one of them in their place. Then we can replace these panels with blank ones. Then I'll remove the physical window from that as well. Right, okay. Yes, all the cables are splines. So the pipes are splines, the cables are splines. They're all spline based, so obviously we can make them any size, any shape. Like if I copy that over here. So I built my own spline system so that it attaches the the head to it and everything. One of the challenges with this is making it not twist, because splines have a habit of twisting if you start sort of changing the orientation up and down. So that it shouldn't twist. I've tried very hard to make it not twist. But yeah, so basically that's how we do all the pipes, all the cables, and they'll all need to be laid out one at a time. Yeah, splines are pretty amazing. Like all the handrails are splines as well. So like with the cabling, basically I just draw out the handrails where I want them. And again, I've put code in place to do things like end caps and stuff, so that we can like properly map them out and then make them join up with other ones. It even like rotates the foot based on the spline direction as well. Probably overkill in some ways, but it's a useful tool. Yeah, the main problem we have with a heavy use of splines in a game like this is that it increases the load time, because obviously it has to create all the spline meshes and loop through the spline and go for all the setup tasks that it needs to go through to create things like all the pipes and handrails and everything. Yeah, see, these ones used to twist at one point. I've got some just some code in there which kind of changes like the up direction based on the bend, just to stop them from twisting. But like all of these ones down here, for example, so these are all the output cables. So each and every single one of these cables needs to be hand routed to its destination box. So like these 8 here in particular, these need to go under the floor, out here, into the maintenance tunnel, like up through the floor there, all the way along here, all the way up these stairs, and to the box that will sit here. So there's a lot of routing of cabling that needs to happen, and obviously that will all be like visible and damageable and repairable and all the rest of it. What I want to do is, rather than having one cable running the entire length, is to segment it. So you'd have one cable that goes from maybe here to here, so that's one bit of cable, and then each segment here is a separate cable, so that we can localize damage and have just that segment require repair. And that's realistic in a way, because if you're putting power sockets or whatever along the length of a cable, then you are having to break that cable to insert a power socket. So you've got to cut the cable, put a socket in, and obviously, if you're daisy chaining sockets all the way along here, then there's individual links of cable between those sockets. So if we can do that in a way that is performant, then that's definitely how I want to do it. Welcome back, Softbox. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I want players to be able to go, right, so, that's the pipe that feeds the reactor. So, if we follow that through the floor, and then, you'll come over here and you'll see the grating in the floor, you can actually follow the pipe all the way through here, and we'll have some grating there as well. So you'll actually see the pipe work its way to its eventual termination point. So, be it pipes, cables, data cables, we want players to be able to follow those pieces of infrastructure all the way from source to destination. I guess to prove the point that yes, they do exist and they are one-to-one, and they really do supply power. If you unplug it, it will stop working. Yeah, so none of this here is final. Obviously, it's all completely placeholdery stuff. Even the reactor model itself is a placeholder. So I started building it properly. So you can see here I went kind of detail heavy doing a lot of this stuff, and then I realized that when it comes to the neutral beam injectors here, I need them more over here where players can access them, because the idea is that the neutral beam injectors will be something that can fail and can be replaced, and etc, etc. So there's 8 of those, and all these little balconies will be there for accessing that and conducting repairs. So we want lots of components on the reactor that are accessible and repairable, including all the pipework. So yeah, so the reactor model needs completely redoing. Plus it's too short now as well, so I've got the light off, but it doesn't reach the ceiling anymore. So that needs fixing too. I'll probably just stick a cap on the top of it for now, so I'll just, where we've got this foot and this equal there, I'll just extend that up to the ceiling for now, just so it reaches, rather than stretching the whole reactor. Because, time is a factor and all. Yes, the cables will eventually be color-coded. Yeah, so right now they're all the same. We'll probably do it via voltage. So, as the voltage of the cable changes, obviously right now the diameter changes. So obviously that is a higher voltage cable than that, because they're different diameters. But yes, we'll change the color as well, based on purpose. And I guess for specialty cables, we've got the ones that go to the shields and the weapons. So those high voltage specialty cables, we'll have them be a different color to like just the distribution cables. So if it's part of like the internal lighting circuit or the internal power, we'll make those a different color. Should make life a bit easier. But yeah, so like how we've got like these flow labels here, and those are decals. So like, you know, we just slap a decal on it just to show some detail, and we'll do that everywhere. So once the pipes and things are finalized, they'll all have flow directions on them and labels, you know, saying what's in them. And we've got the color-coded bandings on them. Like these ones are a different color depending on what fluid they hold, but we'll have physical labels as well. Pretty sure they used to have flow labels on them. I don't think we'll have Tesla robots, no. Unless we're allowed to have Tesla robots, in which case we might do. Right, so I've got... I imagine I've probably blocked the lift. Where is it? No, we're good. Okay, so let's just move a bunch of this up to F deck. Right, so you, and you. Just make sure you're actually on F deck. Make sure that you're on F deck. I have a terrible habit of placing geometry on the wrong level. You want the door frame. I'm going to have to do something custom when it comes to the lift. Okay, so those ones done. Yes, you can see now that the reactor doesn't reach anymore. Old geometry, that can go. Same there. All need replacing. Right, so with any luck, I've already done the segments here. I'm hazarding a guess that there's a different number of segments on this one, just to be awkward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. So that one's going to be a pain. So 5 there, and then 6 on all the rest of them. And I think the only reason I actually went ahead and did that is because you don't need to fit a door there, whereas on these ones they have to be wide enough to be able to fit a door and a panel and everything. Which is why those ones are 5 and these ones are 6. It does mean the snapping guide's wrong, so I have to double up the snapping guide a little bit, or you'll cheat and just copy them up instead. So we want, yes, we don't want the snapping guide at all actually, so yeah, that one's off. So I'm just going to copy these up as they are, which they're not going to snap on EDEC, but we know that they are minus 1700, minus 350. No, other way around. Minus 1700 plus 350. Yeah, there we go. That puts them at the right spot. And then the same again for the deck above. So if we go to D-deck, interior walls. So what are we on? So minus 1350. So we'll copy those up and then do minus 1000, wouldn't it? Yeah, perfect. Technically we've got some top bits we don't need, but we'll probably open the ceiling up a little bit. You make a good point there, Ethan, yeah. I do like to make life difficult for myself, obviously. I'll do them en masse in a minute. Because the beauty of all the ones in the reactor room is that they all need to be visible from every level. Well, D downwards at least. Because you can stand here and look up and stuff, so they all need to be visible. Right, so grab all of these. Deck interior walls, copy them up. Minus 1700 plus 350. And then go to D-deck. Minus 1000. Okay. Yeah, so what we can do then is we can select all of the panels that we're using, and then we can go to Asset Actions and select actors using this asset. So that basically selects everything for us, and then we can set that up. So D, E, F, G. just ensures that their visibility is properly managed all at once. Okay, so we are almost at the 4-hour mark, so I won't get started on anything new. What's that? Oh, that's part of the top. So I'll go ahead and pop this out as a build as is. So in this build, basically all the corridor modelling should be done apart from that. Obviously we've got a couple of bits to fill in there, but most of these have wall panels back again, so that's good. The scanning and navigation tutorial was practically done. I think there's a couple of hiccups, but they just need refining. Yes. So that be that. I don't think I've introduced you to my cat. She's currently on my lap. Hang on, let me... See, I've been deving this whole time with a cat sat on my lap. Let me show you off, Pip. Stop struggling, stop struggling. There we go. This is Pip. Say hi, Pip. Who doesn't want to be on camera, clearly. She is 14 years old. She's an old cat and was the runt of the litter, which is why she's so tiny. She's the size of a kitten, yet she's 14 years old. And really, really didn't want to be on camera. But yeah, she's been sat on my lap this whole time. Anyway, on that happy note, I shall wish you all adieu, and I shall see you all on Sunday stream. And with any luck, if we can get this thing pushed hard, then we might be announcing the demo release live on stream and making it live on stream. That would be lovely if we could get that done. So, full steam ahead. Right, have a good one, everyone. I shall see you on Sunday. Bye for now.